Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Monday. It is February the 23rd, and thanks for being along. We're going to run through a whole bunch of stuff. It was a big weekend. The Make-A-Wish director of the FBI went to Italy to chug beers and splash it on people, wore an Olympic gold medal. That's really cool. Luckily, nothing happened domestically, except some guy showed up at MaraLago and was killed by the Secret Service while he was armed and potentially trying to do an assassination. And at least nothing happened else that was a really big deal nearby. Oh, Mexico was on fire, and we're in the middle of a massive cartel war. So things are going swimmingly. Luckily, U.S. hockey won gold. For those of you guys that celebrate things about sports, that seems like a big deal, I guess. But it's not a big deal to me. For those people who aren't, for people who've recognized that there was a time, maybe 15 years ago, I would have been really excited about U.S. gold in anything because I actually cared what was going on. And now I just look and go, yeah, half the athletes don't care about America. And apparently we've got a drunken frat boy for an FBI director who some reason had to be in Italy. It was a totally important work trip for him to be there. And the craziest part about all of this stuff is there's an actual mutiny happening inside the federal government. And the Trump administration is focused on completely different things, like how to run an information op on X, which we'll talk about in a moment. We also had a major court decision drop down on Friday. The tariffs that Donald Trump was imposing so that we could get rid of the IRS were found to be unconstitutional. So he turned around and decided to do more of them. That's super exciting. And I guess the saddest part about it is that he cares what somebody on C-SPAN thinks and dialed into C-SPAN to give them a piece of his mind under a fake name. So we've got that little call. I guess he got cut off in the middle of all that. Goes by the false alias John Barron. It's like a well-publicized thing that Donald Trump uses that name. So there you go. And in the meantime, there's continued fallout. There's more people who are still losing jobs and are being implicated in the Epstein files. And if you guys missed what went on Friday's program, I would say don't even listen to this one right now. Go back and listen to Fridays. I had George Hill on. We talked about a couple of really important things. Number one, we talked about how you can frame the Iran situation and what priorities would have to be important to you for you to realize like, oh, I am in favor of war or I'm not. And he actually made arguments, that basically says, here's the data. Here's why it could matter to you one way or another. This is what we could do. This is why we might do it. The end that I walked away with is that we could wait on the Iran thing, that we don't have to force an action unless you have a bunch of people who are banging the drum saying that there needs to be conflict now. And there are definitely those voices, the Lindsey Grahams, the Mark Levins in the media space, and then you have people in the administration like the Mike Huckabee types. So I have some clips from an interview that America's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, sat down with Tucker Carlson, and depending on what you think before you get there, is what you think apparently when you end. If you went in there thinking that Mike Huckabee is actually the Israeli ambassador for America, in other words, he actually puts Israel first, then you might walk away thinking that Tucker Carlson made some really good points. And if you think the alternative, that, Israel's our greatest ally, even though there's no evidence that that's true. In fact, we actually debunked that pretty thoroughly, I think, on Friday. For anybody who's ever worked in the counterintelligence space, it's very clear Israel is at the very least a liability. And generally speaking, they're like a 50-50 proposition no matter what they're doing. But if you don't believe that, and you think Israel's the best, then you will walk away thinking that Tucker Carlson got destroyed. So we're living in a time when the objective reality in front of us is actually not something that we can even have a conversation about. And that's what I'm seeing. A guy in his late 40s who's unmarried and single and flies out for the tune of a couple $100,000 on our dime, partying with American athletes, like that's really great or it's really bad, and your notion is preconceived. I'm going to go behind because I don't really care about that part of it. What I care about is that what happened yesterday in the leaking of some video of Kash Patel hanging out in a locker room says so much more then probably he knows. So if you're listening from the FBI, one, you're going to know that I'm right. And number two, if you are somebody who's loyal to Kash Patel, maybe you let him know that he's got a mutiny on his hands and he probably didn't realize it. So we're going to get into all that stuff and maybe even some more things because I got a whole weekend full of clips and stories to go through. So we'll do all that. Let's start off with my friends over at Patriot Protect. It's patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Using my name at checkout will save you 15% on an annual subscription to their various packages. It's worth knowing that every major company is using AI right now, whether it be TurboTax or Google or Amazon or Microsoft or Meta or Apple or various banks or insurance companies or hospitals, credit bureaus, retailers, data firms. Can we keep going? Yes, we could. It's all about innovation, supposedly, but what it really means is that your personal information is being served up and turned into profit for various reasons. Big companies are taking your information and you're in action. They're serving it up on a silver platter to cyber criminals and other bad actors because almost all these people eventually get hacked. And then we find out that your name and your address and your phone number and your job and your family and what other kind of data they have on you that they've collected, your personal habits and histories, are all available to data brokers who put them up on people search websites in detailed profiles without your permission so that scammers and cyber criminals can find you. They just use that to target you. And the best way to get rid of it is to have somebody go out there and scrape the web for you. And you can do that with my friends over at Patriot Protect. They have a 24/7 search and destroy protocol that is constantly running. You don't have to be part of the AI machine. You don't have to be a sitting duck right there. You want an anti-AI tool that's scraping the web and getting the stuff off Google and all the other places. There's over 240 different websites that are posting your information, and they are all searching through the same AI-based databases to give scammers opportunities to find you. If you guys don't want to be a victim, then just don't be someone that's easy to find. Put on that digital camouflage like you see on the screen, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Save yourself 15% on an annual subscription. It's what I use. It's what my wife uses. It's what my folks use. There are other suspendables, former FBI guys that are using the same thing. Again, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. Really appreciate them sticking with us because they're awesome. And we'll probably have an update pretty soon coming in from Skip about whatever other things. I keep getting packages in the mail. Many of you guys get these too, where they're like, hey, sorry, we're Blue Cross Blue Shield. I know we haven't been your provider for a couple of years, but also we lost all your data because we're not good at this. So anyway, you're probably a victim of some sort of a leak. And if you guys want to protect yourself, check it out. Let's get into today's program. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's never a good sign when I see that our live chat is going in and when I look up after the end of the ad read and I see somebody is already talking about somebody being a good or a bad Jew. That's not a good way to start, people. Let's not do that. Okay, so let's look at what the world looks like. Again, I think we're living in a time when there is a preconceived notion. Everybody's confirmation bias colors what they think. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We all have that possibility. You walk into a situation and you carry all the biases and all the experiences and all of the things that you might already think. You're inclined to believe one thing or another. We all do it. And then most of us go and try to find a news source that affirms the way that we think the world is going. And then I think, and this is the reason for the intro that we have. If you guys don't know, our little intro is voiced by my father. Longtime media guy, someone that I talk to on a regular basis to kind of suss out where the biases are, what we believe to be the case, and then like how do we challenge those things. And the number one thing I see is if you want to go pick up something, if you want to find comforting lies, there's a great place to sling them. You can go to MS Now if you're on the hard left, and if you just think that everything Donald Trump does is evil and dangerous. And if you think that everything Donald Trump does is amazing and special and incredible, if you just want to be fed some slopaganda, should we make that word? I haven't heard that one before. Slopaganda? That's what it is, right? It's propaganda. It's sloppy. I want to start off with Jesse Waters letting you know, don't worry about any of the scam. Don't worry about the fact that Mexico might be on fire right now and that we might have a cartel war. And there's actually some indication that the U.S. is at fault for doing this, and that Kash Patel, the current FBI director, may have actually let the cat out of the bag. If you guys recall, a couple of weeks ago, there was this rendition of a guy named Ryan Wedding. And I'm hearing some mixed information. I've got friends who are friends with people down in Mexico that are, regular journalists. It strikes me that if Patel actually had something to do with this, which is that he would have said, hey, I know that we had a deal where we weren't going to disclose U.S. involvement in the rendition of this person who surrendered. We're not supposed to say that we are in a joint operation with the Mexican authorities, allowing U.S. military operators or U.S. Law enforcement personnel into the country to do the stuff that we want. If it is the case that Patel let the cat out of the bag simply because he's being prideful, which, by the way, was the subject of the readings for anybody who was Catholic and went to Mass, the story of Pride, the original fall, where the temptation to show how great you are in front of God, in front of the devil, that was the readings. Kind of interesting. If it was pride that got the best of it, and now Mexico is on fire, that's interesting. Fox News doesn't want to lead with that. This is Jesse Waters, who I don't have any personal beef with Jesse Waters. I just think that he is a good mouthpiece for whatever the regime is, as long as the regime is GOP. This is his branding. And so they're going to let you know how awesome cocaine in the White House is finally going to be investigated properly. Got some problems with that because I think we just wasted a full freaking year. And then also aliens.
Cocaine and aliens on deck. Fox News alert, primetime just got exclusive photos of the most famous baggie in America. The cocaine found inside Biden's White House. Years after filing a FOIA, the FBI sent us these never-before-seen pictures of the coke being tested in their lab. But we still don't have an answer to the most basic question, whose is it? Somehow in the most surveilled building on planet Earth, even after finding DNA on the bag, Secret Service closed the case after just 11 days without any suspects. But FBI Director Kash Patel reopened the investigation, so maybe this case won't be cold forever.
So speaking...
Okay. And we'll get to the speaking of bit in a second there. Listen, Kash Patel has reopened the case on cocaine in the White House, right? Fox News alert. We got the backpack. Fox News alert. We're going to go after the cocaine in the White House, which goes way the hell back. It's almost like we didn't just live the last year and we're supposed to ignore it. Again, if you want to find the top end of slopaganda, the people that are going to do the knob slobbing of the lower level of the cabinet so the cabinet can do the knob slobbing of the president, then you need to go to Fox News. And here I have a picture of the FBI director on the screen with a apparently historic goal and maybe a puck and maybe a Wayne Gretzky and maybe some historic hockey moment. I saw a post this morning that said, if I had a nickel for every time the FBI director in the United States injected himself into hockey history, I would have exactly 2 nickels. And there's one of them. So let's just hone in on the cocaine thing. And I'm not saying that somebody who sniffs all the time on camera is involved in cocaine, although there are some interesting allegations coming out of the FBI about that itself. Let's do some flashback about what that case was that Jesse Waters is so excited about. Shall we?
Not letting this agency go down in flames. I'm sorry. I was very proud to be a part of it. I work with good guys. A whistleblower, multiple whistleblowers have been calling me about 2 specific cases for weeks. Media people, get your pens out, as I know you're not going to cover this. Let's start number 1 with the cocaine story. So I've been working on this for a long time. Remember the cocaine that was found at the White House? You want to talk about a case. I know folks in the Secret Service, I know you're watching. You know, I know this is true. So please resign now before I start making names public on this, because I will, because I know the names. All right? It's time for you all to step down. Ron Rowe included. You know what you did. As Susan Crabtree, an excellent reporter, has already reported on, they got a partial hit off the baggie. Do we need to do the baggie demo again? Here is a baggie. It's not porous. If you were to put cocaine or drugs in it and drop it somewhere in the White House, there's going to be a fingerprint or some DNA on it. That's just how this works.
That's excellent CSI tactics and techniques. That is what we call evidence response team training that could be probably shown on a slide deck and maybe a quick video for people who want to learn how to connect evidence to a crime. If there's a baggie and it's non-porous and it has fingerprints, tough guy, the slop father there, just explained to you exactly what needs to be done. Now, that was pre-FBI Dan Bongino. You may recognize the voice. And so I think Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty confident that guy got himself a job in the FBI. And then he actually told us this was really an important case to him, even if other people didn't. In fact, he took to Fox News, same place that is now celebrating, we got the baggie picture, we've got the backpack. By the way, does anyone know what's going on? Anyone see any news coverage about Nancy Guthrie case? Apparently it's still going. I'm guessing that she is no longer with us and probably decomposing somewhere, as sad as that sounds, and probably smells about as bad as a gold medal, winning hockey game locker room. The Slopfather went to that agency after all that tough talk. I know your names. People are going to, did anyone ever get held accountable? Did we lose a bunch of jobs? Was there like a culling at the Secret Service where people told what they did wrong? Did they suffer some consequences? Nah. This is a PR administration. This is all about how can we get some people to watch us? How can we get people to cheer? That's our guy. And how can we info-op it? So let's go to Fox News and see if we ever, did we think about that cocaine in the White House thing more than once?
So the moment Kash and I swore in, we realized that the first thing we had to do is rebuild public trust. This is your FBI. It's not mine. I tell the employees every day, you don't own it. You don't own it. I don't own it. It's like being the center fielder for the Yankees. That'll live with you forever, but you don't own the Yankees. It's a proud franchise. The place has taken a reputational hit. There is zero question about it. There were a lot of bad actors. One of them still out there causing us all kinds of trouble. So we had to fix it and rebuild public trust. One of the ways to do it is these cases of significant public interest that matter. We had 2 pipe bombs planted on January 6th. I mean, we were told by partisan actors out there this was the insurrection, the world was going to fall apart, and no one seemed to show any interest in this case. The second we got in, I put a team on it, and I said, I want answers on this. And I'm pretty confident that we're closing in on some suspects. We got to. The reason, by the way, I use social media with these cases, I'm trying to communicate on social media, is nothing's by accident, guys. I do nothing by accident. Every time I put a tweet out on it, we get tips. We got a fascinating tip on one of these cases, one of the 3. I don't want to say which one, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to close out one of them, hopefully shortly. And in the cocaine in the White House, I saw someone on social media, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. We work for you, but said, I don't care about the case. Yeah, I do. I was a Secret Service agent. A potentially hazardous material made its way into the White House. Nobody seems to know how it got there, and nobody seemed to investigate it fully. Like, what planet do we live on where that's not of public interest? So
Roger that. Cool. They got to the bottom of that one, right? They got the brony. They got the wrong guy who was buying the bomb-making materials after the bombs were dropped, who was planning to do bombings before the election, but he was inspired by the election, which hadn't happened yet. The story that has so many holes through it that you could drive a semi-truck through. The one that could never go to trial ever because the FBI makes claims that are objectively untrue. Like he parked somewhere when he didn't park there because his car wasn't there when they said it was there, and it couldn't have been there because there's cameras covering the ins and the outs of that space. The brony, the black guy that was like into My Little Pony that lived in the basement, and he's autistic, and he somehow knew how to avoid all the cameras in Washington, D.C. You remember that guy? Who totally had no connection to the government whatsoever, was not connected to Capitol Police, wasn't an insider, wasn't part of like a Fedsurrection or any of the things that were argued by that same exact guy. They found that guy. Remember him? So there were 3 cases of public importance. Here's where that actually comes into play. Because in that same interview, they were talking about the depravity of Jim Comey. That goes back to like May or June of 2025. Okay. And so the reason that interview is so interesting to me, it's a little moment in time, it's a little snapshot of the utter and abject failures and the ability for the FBI to thrust and foist terrible PR moments on people that are running it when they have no idea what the animal is. Kash Patel, no idea what the FBI is. Dan Bongino still doesn't know what the FBI is. I have 8 times as much time at the FBI as either of those guys. I have 6 times as much time as Kash Patel, but 8 times as much as Dan. So as we look at what went on there, and it's totally worth saying, they've been slowly biding their time. We're talking about an agency that does nothing more than set people up in certain spaces in the national security realm, that does manipulation, that does intelligence operations domestically, right? And then it also has the capabilities of doing law enforcement. Here's where that's going to get really interesting. Oh, on Friday's show, I ran down the logical train, and I'm going to make it very short. But if you guys want to go back, I'll go back this week, and I will cut the pieces from George Hill's interview so you guys can see it. The simple argument is this: the Epstein apartment in New York. I'm jumping around a little bit, but follow me here. There was an apartment that Jeffrey Epstein had in New York. It was actually like 21,000 square feet, so it wasn't like an apartment. It was like a freaking mansion that was, on a street. The physical security and the technical security, which is like your security systems and your cameras and so on, was being managed by the permanent mission of Israel to the UN. And that was linked in through some of the files that have been released and some of the emails back and forth showing that Ehud Barak, who was the former prime minister, spent a bunch of time there, and the Israelis had an invested interest in being in his apartment, making sure that it was secure. So there's a few things that we can very easily logically extrapolate. And it goes like this: if the Israelis are doing physical security at a U.S. citizen's home that is a ultra high net individual and is connected to heads of state and heads of corporations and captains of industry and people that are movers and shakers in New York City, there is a 100% chance that not only is the Israeli, physical security apparatus from the UN going to be involved, but their intelligence apparatus as well. So Mossad or IDF components, they're going to be involved in what's going on there. That's number one. If the Mossad and the IDF are there, and they are, then you have an interaction that's going to happen from our intelligence side to include the NSA, as George pointed out, on the collections end, the technical collections or signals intelligence. The second piece of it is going to be the CIA, who's going to be interested in any of those people that travel overseas, and their domestic wing, which is going to be called NR or National Resource, and that works directly with the FBI, which means the FBI was involved as well. So now we can tell you, just from listening to a couple of little facts that came out of the Epstein files, that the FBI's New York field office, which was initially the group that was holding back Epstein files, according to Patel and Bondi and whatever, going back like a straight year at this point, they let us know that we have all of these members of the United States intelligence community involved in what was going on there. And we still don't have the details on what that was. But what was going on, whatever he was doing, whether it was a blackmail operation, whether it was money laundering, whether it was just an influence op, whether it was an access agent, gateway, and we talked about what all those things are. If that is the case, then you know that the FBI's brass in New York City were co-signing on some of this stuff. They were green-lighting at least some of the information, whatever they were aware of. And the problem with that is the people that come out of the New York field office are exactly the people that are currently running the FBI. We call them the New York Mafia inside the Bureau. And those people work in one space and one space specifically, the counter intel space, the intelligence world. Okay. And there's a lot of corruption that's both implied. There's a lot of political actors there. We had Andy McCabe come out of there. He was the acting director of the Bureau. Kind of funny little story. My daughter was showing me the booklet. We made like a published book of a bunch of photos and stuff from her first year of life. My wife was trying to make that for all of our kids. And in there, and I'd forgotten I got this, there was a way on the FBI's internal whatever server system where you could request a letter congratulating you and your spouse for the birth of a child. And I have a letter signed by acting director Andy McCabe congratulating me on the birth of my first daughter, which is funny because we have a picture of it in the book. And I went like, oh yeah. Okay. The reason why this matters is because the people that came out of the New York field office are currently the people that are running the FBI, and they have been for a very long time. Andy McCabe was one of the actors that people pointed out as being political and a bad actor. His wife had, a lot of connections, took money and stuff from the Clintons via Governor McAuliffe in Virginia. There was like all these connections that were going on at the time. And most of these things are just sort of like, I just have peripheral awareness of them now. There's too many things to remember. We had Charlie McGonigal, who we did stories on here. We interviewed his girlfriend. She basically made the allegation. She thinks that the money that he was caught with was maybe like 1/10 or maybe 1/20th of what he actually had going on. He was found with a couple $100,000 in cash in like a brown paper McDonald's bag that he had gotten from Albanian influence operatives, people who are working in intelligence over there. And so they're corruptible folks. Now, here's what you have to understand, and I think I pointed this out with George really well. The people at the senior executive service in my former agency, and this may be the case for other agencies, but I just know it about my own. The people that are out there, their biggest goal is to find a job that will take them from making the $220, the $240, the $260,000 a year that they make as a senior FBI executive. And what they want to do is make 3, 4, 5x that in private industry. So they are constantly in the business of making inroads into private industry, making private public partnerships where they've made friends with somebody so that when they retire, they're going to get offered a senior position at, let's say, Disney, like David Bowditch, the former deputy director, is at. They want to go and be involved in Hollywood. They want to go like James Baker was and want to work and be the senior counsel for Twitter. They want to go into the info, into a place where there's a way to apply the skill set and the connections they have, and they want to make a ton more money. So you can imagine how important a Jeffrey Epstein type figure would be, who's obviously like a money and influence and power broker in New York City, especially if you have compromise on him, or if you have the ability to actually say, I've been doing tactical collection on him, so I know where he's actually compromised, and we can lean on him with an arrest, or otherwise we can tell him, look, the minute we want you to go to prison, you go to prison, and if we feel like it, you don't live through it, and all the other kind of things that they can do. If that's the case, if you have that kind of stuff, then yeah, you can probably get yourself some pretty lucrative deals, and he can lean on, because it seems like Jeffrey Epstein, at the very least, if he wasn't involved in all the worst things that people think he was, and he probably was involved in that, at the very least, he had influence, power, and connections where he could make those, introductions as needed. All right, why is that all relevant? It's relevant because over the weekend, and mostly this was actually just yesterday, a video broke. I'm going to share the video in kind of a funny way. And it was of the FBI director who was trying to avoid the appearance that he was specifically in Italy for the Olympics. And he went on and put on a pretty good show. He had 4 well-publicized public events, meeting people at the Marine Guard, hanging out with quote-unquote local partners, international partners in Italian law enforcement, and a bunch of other bullshit, which was essentially cover for what was really going on, which is that in July of last year, and you guys can check my X timeline because I've quoted it a few times, in July of last year, he found out that the NHL was going to allow pro players to be on Team USA for the Olympics. And that meant that the U.S. hockey had a strong capability or possibility of winning gold. And so he created a business trip to go to watch this hockey finals. And I think that if anybody wanted to investigate it, and there are easy ways to do it. The oversight committee, especially if they turn over leadership and you end up with Democrats in charge. If the Democrats end up with the subpoena powers, they can pull the records from the FBI, which will be 100% too happy to give them over, especially if they can find out that they've got an impeachment against Kash Patel, which I don't think is unlikely. If they go and get the stuff, they're going to show that the comms going back and forth between Patel and Erica Knight, who's his PR lady, and Ben Williamson, who's the AD of Public Affairs, and some of the other stuff, it's going to show that they basically booked a trip. This is my speculation here. They book a trip specifically to get there for hockey, and then they're going to get some cover meetings that says this is why we went there. And the embarrassing then that happened over the weekend are twofold. Number one, this guy who is doing this from his personal account, in complete violation, by the way, of DOJ media policy. He says that this article is designed to mislead. This was a CBS article by Dan Klaidman and some others over at CBS saying that Kash Patel used the FBI jet to fly to Italy with plans to attend the U.S. men's hockey team. Sources say that's what they claim. You guys can read the article. Many of you guys sent it over to me. I read it. I know it to be the case. We know it to be the case because he went there and he was at the hockey game. The article is designed to mislead, said Ben on the 19th. This was not yesterday, but like 3 days ago. CBS is looking at public flight tracking and guessing and then filling in the space with old info and quotes from Democrats. They use the word Democrats like it's an insult. It could be just independents. No, this is not a personal trip, is what the assistant director of public affairs says. Kash Patel's on a trip that was planned months ago. That should be fun and easy to prove that why it was done. It includes partner meetings with Italian law enforcement, so critical, security officials, who invited the director last July. Okay, there you go. There's the July connection and his tweet out there, which he said and posted on his personal Twitter page. And meeting with the ambassador. Okay, and then some more meetings and some Legat staff. Legat is the legal attaché that's at the embassy. The FBI also has a major role in Olympic security, as we do with World Cup and F1 and more. That's actually not that true. They can say it. They don't. The host country has it. The FBI has a liaison counterpart. They're going to be out of the Legat. There's not a ton of FBI personnel that need to be there. And there certainly isn't like a major mission. It's not something that takes priority over domestic law enforcement. There's no massive investigative role there. They can do some threat posturing, but apparently they can't even find threats that are coming to the White House. So you've got that. So now they say that he's there, like, to check out FBI personnel and give them a thanks. No, he's there to watch the freaking hockey game. And the reason we know it is because the video leaked out and there's more context to it. This is what it looked like.
Breaking exclusive.
All right, and we don't need to watch all of that, but he's shaking his head like a teenage rock groupie, and he's wearing somebody else's Olympic gold medal that they put on his neck, and he's spraying a beer, even though he didn't win anything, and he doesn't play for the game, for the team, and he looks like a retarded frat boy. And here's where the real scandal is, and this is the mutiny. That video was sent out by about 8 or 10 people inside the FBI, to include executives that are looking at him every day. And those people sent it out to ProPublica and the New York Times and the New York Sun and to MSNBC and to CBS and to NBC. It went absolutely everywhere. And all these reporters from all these different outlets reached out and were like, hey, have you seen this? Hey, have you seen this? I got 8 different sort of text message emails within a period of about 12 minutes. Because the people inside the Bureau that were shotgunning this out to every single left-leaning contact they had, they all were doing it at exactly the same time. And that tells us some really important things. Any of you guys who's ever been in an organization know that when the leader of your organization embarrasses themselves on the world stage, and there's a concentrated, deliberate, and let's say unified movement to take him down, the thing that they're going to do is to take this incriminating type video. And yeah, you can say all the MAGA people are like, well, he's celebrating because America. You know what? Spare me with that, because what this is it shows more important than how people receive it. Oh, Kyle Seraphin thinks it's mean. Kyle doesn't like Kash, so who cares what he thinks? Ignore that for a minute. How about the fact that people inside of quote unquote this FBI, that we had Dan Bongino and Kash Patel told us that they turned it around. Those people are looking at that dipshit who's acting like a buffoon. And they're like, we need to make sure that everybody knows about this. We need to share this video. Again, we do a lot of meta-analysis here, where it's like the story is the story. He's drinking beer and spraying it around. By the way, it was a Michelob Ultra, so that's kind of embarrassing just in and of itself. He's spraying beer around for an Olympic gold that he didn't win and had nothing to do with. And the only reason that he's in the locker room is because he's the FBI director, because he doesn't get into these pictures as Kash Patel, like buddy of the team. He gets into the locker room because he's the FBI director. If he was serious and he was meant to be there, it wouldn't have been that he showed up wearing a freaking team jersey. If he was serious, he would have been in a suit. He would have looked like this. Like, this is actually like plausible. Oh, he's there in some official capacity. No, he's there as a fan. Here's the other video of it.
Let's fucking go!
Right? These guys are having a good time. God bless them. I understand what that looks like. But I'll tell you this. I'm going to turn the video. I've been in some celebrations where some big things happen for me and people around me, especially like a team full of guys. I've graduated from 2 special operations selections. You get pretty amped up. That's fine. I've never sprayed beer on anybody for it. That was not the kind of guys we were. But that being said, I've also never had some rando government official pop in to try to be part of what was happening and then welcomed him in, because that would also be completely bizarre. Even if they were huge fans of like whatever it was that was going on. And the people that were in the Bureau looked at this and they were like, this is freaking embarrassing. This is a potential kill shot on the director. And we are going to share it with absolutely everybody. And that tells you that there's a mutiny. So there's a few things we can extrapolate from it. And I'm going to do that in just one second. As we're watching right now, let me just remind you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. If you're watching on Rumble, do the same thing. As long as we're there, We're throwing a lot of grenades into the people that don't like this kind of stuff. So whatever, subscribe at more than one place. And if you guys have an opportunity, you might check out Spotify. It's a free app. It costs you $0. It's the best user experience, I think, on the audio end because you get video too. KyleSeraphinShow.com is how you get there. Become a follower there. It's the easiest way for us to do comments back and forth, by the way. The interface is really good for me, so I can see what you guys write. If you want to join us on locals at KyleSeraphin.com, we appreciate all the people that are doing that kind of stuff. Either way, wherever you're at, subscribe. Make sure you've liked it. Share it with a friend. Always appreciated. You guys are the ones who keep the show in business. Okay, so all of that being said, let me do some extrapolation for you. Here's what I know. They almost certainly have an off-books investigation. If nothing else, the details of the investigation are available to the people that would be willing to execute it the minute they have an opportunity. The second that Kash is either impeached or he is removed, resigned, fired, Kash Patel will have the FBI hunting him down like a dog the same way that Donald Trump did. I'm going to just guarantee it to you right now. The minute that he is not in charge, and I don't think that lasts very long at all, the minute that happens, this unserious guy is going to have all the compromise that the security details have been picking up. They're going to have access to all of his shady shenanigans anytime that they can document. They'll be able to direct investigators to exactly where he lied. There's no question in my mind that he perjured himself. And so he now is working at an agency that is basically just biding their time and setting him up. And this was, if not the first shot, this was the most public shot showing that they will come for him when the time comes. And if he doesn't know it, then he's a complete idiot. But Donald Trump should know it. Because at the end of the day, the buck stops with the boss, does it not? It should. That's where people should be looking and going, okay, got it. This group is coming for us. And it turns out, it seems like everybody except the Trump administration, the Epstein administration, it seems like the people outside the White House and the DC bubble, we all look at it and we go like, this is ridiculous. Okay? You had a generational opportunity to de-weaponize a terrifying government. And instead, you're mad that Kyle Seraphin hurt your feelings or that left-leaning outlets like, Ken Delanian over at MSNBC or MS Now is what they're called now, or Will Turlton at ProPublica published a video that your people in the executive office, in the executive branch of government sent out to everybody. There are people that are clearly looking and saying you are vulnerable and weak and you have dumb people working for you and you're setting yourselves up for it. Tim Dillon recognizes it. I think this is kind of funny. This is kind of just a comical detox for me. Just let me play this real quick.
We had a lot of hard decisions, and that comes with the territory of the job. But once you look outside of the cauldron of Washington, D.C., and this is one of the things that, I'm trying to remind myself of every day. Outside of here, there is a different America than the one that lives in the national capital region. And I try to remind myself every day when making those difficult decisions that you talked about that we make on a daily basis.
Just stop it for a minute. What the fuck are these people talking about? What in God's name are these two people talking about? Can anyone even venture a guess at this point? They make Les Wexner look like an open book. What are these two ghouls talking about? What in the fuck are they talking about? Resources, decisions. Outside of D.C., there's people that live outside of D.C.? Yeah. That's what he learned? 2 years running, a year running the FBI, he learned that people live outside of the state of Virginia? This is what he learned? Did he learn that there's a population outside of the District of Columbia? That's all he learned.
Yeah, that's what they learned. And what they haven't figured out is that there's a major problem that they are at the center of, that he is going to get blamed for, whether it's his fault or not. I think the FBI is probably covering for itself, and they're going to set Patel up to take the fall on it. And they've already done it. They've already made Bongino look like a fool for being there. They're going to continue to discredit Patel because of his own stupid actions, flying around, acting like a movie star. There are significant numbers of people that have let me know that like we don't have enough budget for training ammunition. We don't have enough budget to do like basic operations where like we're just trying to get, you know, the body armor replaced that's 10 years old and so on. Meanwhile, we have $400,000 to send $100,000 in each direction for the FBI director to go there, and $30,000+ a day is what it costs to put a security detail on. By the way, when Kash went there to go drink beer with Team USA, we're paying for his meals. Do you guys realize that? We're paying for his per diem. That was a 100% paid work trip on our dollar. If that doesn't enrage you, if you're a regular person who's looking there and like, hey, man, how am I going to figure out? Like, I make a decision every single day if my wife is like, hey, we're kind of coming up on dinner time right now. I don't have something prepared. Should we go out and go to dinner somewhere? And it's like, I don't know. We're going to go spend $100 minimum. And that's a lot of money to go feed ourselves with like mediocre food. Maybe not. Maybe we just like figure out what we have from leftovers. Is that what we'll do? So we'll do leftovers. We're eating leftovers like regular people. You're eating leftovers. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel to figure out how you're going to put it together. You're about to pay a tax bill and find out whether or not Donald Trump was right about what he saved you. Kash Patel's blowing like $400,000 on a trip to Italy for his fantasy hockey team experience. And we paid for his meals. We did. All of us. Everyone listening here had a little cut of it. Not a lot, but a little. Right? And then we continue to get fallout from the Epstein stuff. And this is where the rubber meets the road, because if Patel was kicking ass, can we just be real honest for a second here? If you go into an administration and you kick absolute ass, if you destroy things, a lot of things can be tolerated. You could be a drunken buffoon and people would be like, look, that dude is a liability when he gets a beer in him. But when he puts his spikes on, he's a freaking serious operator, right? Everybody who's been in the military knows this. There are some men that you do not want in garrison. Like, they are scary, right? They get drunk, they abuse waitresses, they smash cars into hotel lobbies, they wreck motorcycles that are not theirs, they jump in bed with other people's wives. Like, guys, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there is an entire culture of absolutely liability-filled human beings that never should be within the garrison. Garrison is like at home, not at war. But when you put them on a battlefield, they make the enemy pay at a very high rate. And so you tolerate that sort of capability. You're like, that's a guy that I want on my team. Is he alive? Does he have SS tattooed on his neck? And is he getting swastika tattooed like in his inner thigh because he's batshit crazy? Sure he is. But when you put him down range, he strikes fear into the heart of the enemy. So we tolerate him being kind of a liability at home. Okay? If Kash Patel was crushing deep state government gangsters, as he wrote about in his book, if they were like, look, we have de-weaponized the FBI, we've cut thousands of jobs, we got rid of the intel component, we're not using FISA 702 anymore because we do not need that. If they were doing the thing that the MAGA people thought they were going to go do, like this thing, here's the Agenda 47. If you saw everybody in Trump's cabinet like united and kicking so much ass that you're like, look, illegals are running scared. They are self-deporting because otherwise they're going to have the door knocked down at 6 a.m. and they're not going to make it to work, right? If you saw job sites being cleared out, if you saw fields of where people were not spraying pesticides anymore because they were all like, I don't know, deported and parachuted into Mexico or whatever. If you saw functionality, if you saw a de-weaponization of government at a massive level, then you'd be like, yeah, look, dude, he's kicking ass. He deserves a vacation. Like, we're willing to pay for it. We're willing to tolerate bad behavior because the good payoff is so high. But it's not. It's not high at all. And that's why we end up with this Epstein fallout, which continues to happen and will continue to happen. And no amount of stupidity or beer drinking and spraying in Italy will eventually distract from this story, which will not go away. And there are more stories out today. This is NBC talking about the fallout, tracking the resignations and the firings and the investigations. Again, the DOJ shut down the investigation. That's Kash Patel. Failed. Massive failure. We're going to reopen the cocaine in the White House story. Why? Because it might be a win for the base and it can point things back at Biden. Shame on them. The Justice Department release of millions of files relating to the investigation to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has shaken the upper echelons of power across the globe. Why would it do that? I thought he did nothing. He trafficked to no one. Remember? There have been multiple high-profile firings and resignations in the United States, abroad, and a number of active criminal investigations, but only overseas, people. Let me show you right here, active criminal investigations overseas. Why is that? Because our guys shut it down. In America, it's done. Here's a look at those who have been affected by the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which was pushed forward. And again, if we did some analysis from last week, what you realize is a couple things. Number one, nobody wanted to be the person to sponsor the bill. Mike Benz was on with, I think, with Kibbe talking about this on The Blaze. And he says nobody wanted to sponsor the bill, but the minute that it popped up, nobody would say no to it. Why? Because it's a political suicide to say you're not going to stand with the victims of sex criminals, and you're not going to stand with the regular people who are theoretically being abused by people who are elite and powerful, to include Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, now known as the British royalty naming nomenclature is really bizarre to me. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, yeah, this is why I don't care about a monarchy. I never understood people that were in America that cared about monarchy. Anyway, he was stripped of his royal titles in 2025 as a result of his ties with Epstein. And then he was arrested last week on Thursday. And it came because they were looking into claims that he had shared confidential documents and exposed British secrets to the man. Why would he be doing that? Why would you be sharing things like, my job is to go out there and represent the crown and my country, and meanwhile, I'm going to share it with this dude who's an American living in New York that is most clearly being monitored by Israel and their intelligence apparatus, which means he's being monitored by U.S. intelligence apparatus. And though we have friendly relationships with those people, if you think the Brits and the Americans were not aware of this prior to, you're nuts. There's no question that the NSA had comms grabs and signal intelligence on Prince Andrew, which means that the MI6 guys did too. 100% chance they did. They knew that he'd already done this. It's just public now, and now they got to interact with it. But apparently we're winning. Okay, so then you have him. You've got a guy named Peter Mendelsohn. He's a former British ambassador to the United States, and he stepped down. He was fired as the ambassador last year for documents showing, released by the House Oversight Committee, that he had a much closer relationship with Epstein than he had previously claimed, kind of like Howard Lutnick. We've got other people here. Former Prime Minister of Norway is named. I don't even know how to do that. Thorbjørn Jagland. If you're from Norway, you have the best names, including letters that are not even letters. You have letters that are like the null sign. Thorbjørn. Somebody will correct me later. Thomas Pritzker stepped down as the chairman of Hyatt Hotels. I'm just running through kind of a list here. Kathy Rumler, someone that Dan Bongino used to focus on in a big way, an Obama fixer and part of the Goldman Sachs. So you got that. Brad Karp, someone we've reported on here as well. Chairman of Paul Weiss, which is a big law firm. George Mitchell, former U.S. Senator, 92. That's weird. I didn't know about him. A couple of others. There's the Sultan Ahmed bin Solayem, whatever. So he got kicked out of his position as a chairman at DP World. Casey Wasserman, the CEO of Wasserman Media Group, was like selling off his talent pool and his agency, and he's not going to be part of that anymore. You got Peter Attila, wellness influencer, who is a doctor, talking about all these things, said a bunch of really gross stuff, said that the women's private parts and eating it was gluten-free and full, no calories or whatever the heck he was saying. Sarah Ferguson, aka Fergie, the former Duchess, bunch of people on here. This is Norway's ambassador to Jordan and Iraq. I mean, it's like the sprawl of it is significant. A Slovakian national security advisor, whose name I can't pronounce, Jake Lang, former culture minister in France. Is that Jacques Lang? Whenever we could do a fake French accent, we should. Mohammed Wahid Hassan, former president of the Maldives, is mentioned in these things. So we're just scrolling through here. I'll put this article over in the comment section for Rumble and YouTube watchers. If you guys want to scroll through, Larry Summers, who's been previously implicated. You got a former CEO of Barclays Bank, and then you've got Leon Black, who's the head of Apollo Global Management, is listed, and I don't see what the story is about him. Maybe they got this headline wrong, but interesting enough, I remember that Apollo Global Management is the firm that's looking at developing Gaza after they're done bombing it into hell. So all that's really interesting. A lot of people. CNN has one right here. This is someone called Deepak Chopra. Wasn't he like a big Oprah person, lady? Wasn't he one of Oprah's people? Had a close relationship with Epstein. Told him to, quote, bring your girls on trips, the messages show. So this was only 50 minutes ago before I went live. We've got another story about yet another person who's in there. He says, I was never involved in, nor did I participate in, any criminal or exploitive conduct. Any contact I had was limited and unrelated to abusive activity, except, oops, maybe not, because some of the words are kind of gross and they say certain things. And the guy was known for being a creep. And so if you're hanging out with them, people are getting smeared left and right. The only people who are not getting smeared are the people who failed to actually give all this information out. And we thought we were going to get it. That's what they ran on. That's what they said they were going to do. The guys stepped up. Forget cocaine in the White House. I think Epstein transparency has been something that's been talked about since day one by this administration. And again, I'm going to just reiterate. The reason why Trump's administration is the Epstein administration is because they're the ones who closed the investigation down. That is yet more evidence that the FBI is actually trying to set these guys up. Okay? Let's just pull ourselves out of it for a second. If you knew that an ongoing investigation means that you have plausible deniability and coverage, that you do not have to give anything out, because you can always hide behind the long-standing and very accepted caveat that's an ongoing investigation. If you can say that, then you don't have to give out Epstein Transparency Act stuff because there's an ongoing investigation. Pass your laws all you want. We are not going to give it to you. We're the executive. Or somebody convinces you to go ahead and close that. And then you get Todd Blanche, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel co-signing on a letter going back to July of 2025. And what are they saying? It's no co-conspirators. Even though there's mention of co-conspirators, we are not going to give it to you. We're done. There will be no more investigations. There will be no more indictments. We didn't find a client list. Everybody is done. And then you get the Julie Kelly statement. I don't care about the files. Everybody's done. Everyone got away with it. Nobody's going to be prosecuted. And they're right. And she was right. Isn't that interesting? If you wanted to destroy credibility, you would release a memo looking like you're doing a cover-up, and then you would remove the plausible deniability of having an ongoing investigation to expose this administration to being the Epstein administration. And then you'd have an FBI that wouldn't give relevant information and would withhold and obfuscate and be able to try to make it look like a cover-up as much as possible, because what they're doing is, like, I think the FBI is probably covering for itself. It just turns out the buck stops at the top. So Patel as the director, Bondi as the AG, and Trump. This all falls on them. And they can't get away from it, no matter what they do. And again, there are new stories every single day with new people who are involved in it. And if they were kicking ass on other fronts, everybody would be okay. I think they'd be like, we could probably handle an Epstein failure in this nation. You'd be like, look, we didn't get the JFK files. We understand. It took a long time. Maybe there's something going on. Maybe it's more than we understand, but at least we're winning. At least we're winning where we're winning, right? Where are we winning? How about the Make America Healthy again, right? We were going to make America great again. We were going to make America rich again and prosperous and successful. We were going to eliminate the IRS, which apparently the IRS is still there. We were going to eliminate that based on running tariffs. That's what I was told, which would mean we'd have to cut about 80% of the federal government for what it is, which would be fine with almost everybody here. You guys wouldn't even know it. Unless you work for the government, unless you're a government contractor, you would not know if 80% of the government went away. You just wouldn't even see it. But if we were winning on that level, it'd be great. But instead, what we have is, let's give immunity in the wake of a potential multi-billion-dollar settlement with glyphosate users, and make sure that they're not liable for any cancer or any sort of things. And it's almost like the people that are in the administration used to actually believe that until they started working for Donald Trump, and then they get compromised on it as well. Here's a little montage for you. I've got a couple little clips. This one is from the Surgeon General, who seems great, in Florida, talking about, can we just act like glyphosate is normal and necessary and it's a national security need? I don't think he agrees with that.
The counter arguments would be that, oh, it's going to be, if we stop using this, or if we reduce how much of this we use, the food system's going to collapse. We don't have a choice but to continue using this. Please remember, that is complete bollocks, okay? There is an alternative to poisoning people. It is not inevitable, okay? Like, it is possible to grow food in a sustainable way that, that doesn't involve folks congesting stuff that makes them sick. So please, when people say that, just know that it's complete nonsense. That for hundreds of years we managed to feed people on the planet without doing it, and this idea that it's inevitable is just it's just nonsense. So all right.
So Florida leading the way again, saying things that are sensible. And this is the stuff that they're talking about. This was the executive order that was issued on February the 18th, promoting the national defense by ensuring an adequate supply of elemental phosphorus and glyphosate-based herbicides. Great. The executive order says by the authority vested in me, this is Donald Trump writing this, ostensibly, although it's drafted by somebody else. I'm sure it was done by people who totally didn't have some interest in elemental phosphorus production and or looking for glyphosate immunity. Section 1 is the policy and findings. Elemental phosphorus is pervasive in defense supply chain and therefore critical and crucial, to military readiness and national defense. That's probably true. It's key in smoke and illumination and incendiary devices. Elemental phosphorus. Got it. It's a critical component in manufacturing semiconductors that are central to numerous defense technologies, radar, solar cells, so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Got it. Okay, so elemental phosphorus equals good. Elemental phosphorus is a critical precursor element to the production of glyphosate-based herbicides, which play a critical role in maintaining America's agricultural advantage by enabling farmers to efficiently and cost-effectively produce food and livestock feed. I think that's the opposite of what MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, wanted to have done. I think that is not what people were voting for when they looked over as independents, who generally speaking maybe said, I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump, but what I am a fan of is RFK Jr. and his take as an environmentalist. And they were like, I'm kind of a lefty. I'd like to see our food supply made safer. How many people did RFK Jr. bring to the ticket to that voting pool? I don't know the answers on that, but I think it's a decent number of people that would otherwise have voted the other way just by default, because RFK Jr., as far as I could tell, is still a Democrat. He might be closer to a Trump Democrat from the 1990s, but he's a Democrat. And so this was a big push for people, and they were suburban moms, and they were people that listened to Turning Point Action, and they were fans of Alex Clark, who've been sitting in here and looking. They're fans of Joel Salatin. They're people that probably listened to, Tom Massey. And they were like, Tom Massey understands the need for regenerative farming and understands that maybe like less pesticides and garbage on our food and less poison in our bodies is better. Yeah. Maybe. Anyway, for these reasons and other reasons, that's my favorite line, by the way, in the entire executive order. For these reasons and other reasons, on November 7th, 2025, the Department of the Interior, acting pursuant to the Energy Act of 2020, designated phosphate as a critical mineral. Do you guys see how the Administrative Procedures Act all comes into play? Once you start giving these authorities to the Department of Interior, the Department of Energy, an energy bill that is also giving access to people to be able to go ahead and declare critical minerals, and then those critical minerals can be defended by national security. When you start doing that, which is, by the way, the same reason why the tariffs got popped up, it's all about national security. Weird. It's the same reason that the Epstein files couldn't be declassified. National security. Isn't that interesting that the catch-all and all of the bullshit that we have to swallow from our government comes down to as we're busy protecting you and you're too dumb to understand what it is. So let me tell you, it's super important. It's classified. It's national security. So shut your mouth and eat the poison. This drives me nuts because there's a concerted effort in our family right now to figure out how is it that we can find foods that just eat like foods 30 years ago, because I don't want my kids to grow up. And I look at kids all over the place in the playground and I'm like, holy God almighty, what are these kids eating that is making them look like this? Like the skinniest fat kid today looks like the fattest fat kid from the 1980s when I was a kid. And you're just going, you're 6. How are you obese? What have they put into your mouth? And we know that it's happening, right? And even if you want to go garden, the runoff and the amount of stuff that's coming in out of the rain because it's being picked up and evaporated around you from all the crap that's in there. It's kind of amazing how bad our food supply is. You get meat and you're like, is this even meat? Is it grown in a lab? Like, what is this? Why has it got all these little holes in it? Why does it look like some dude went through it with a fork? And then people were like, well, it's because it was frozen and then it crystallized and then it decrystallized and it left all these porous pieces down. I'm like, oh, but this beef was never supposed to be frozen. So why am I eating beef that was never supposed to be frozen, but is in fact frozen and has a bunch of ice crystal holes in it, and then it tastes like crap? I didn't even want to do a carnivore diet anymore because of that. So anyway, I'm looking at all this stuff. Elemental phosphorus is a critical precursor in production of glyphosate-based herbicides. It plays a critical role. So we need to have it. There's no direct one-for-one chemical alternative to glyphosate-based herbicides, and therefore we have to do certain things like ensure that there's an adequate supply of elemental phosphorus and glyphosate-based herbicides, right? If only some people had spoken out against this previously, I don't know, like a Secretary of Health and Human Services. And by the way, here's the little section here that those of you who are aware of it, Section 3, immunity. This order confers all immunity for Section 707 of Title 50 U.S. Code 4557. Additionally, domestic producers of elemental phosphorus and glyphosate-based herbicides are required to comply with this order, and they are safe from prosecution, apparently. Yeah, there was this dude who had a real problem with this kind of stuff before, and they got him into the administration, and a lot of people voted for Trump because of him. And then we've got this changeover.
Well, I believe that that glyphosate causes cancer. I believe that masks, that there's no...
Yeah. Wait, what? Glyphosate causes cancer? You just slip that in there? You can't just say that, RFK Jr. There must be longer thoughts you have about this stuff.
We shouldn't be talking about glyphosate. We should be talking about Roundup. And if you read all of these documents that we've gotten from Monsanto and see all the sneaky stuff that they do, one of the most fearful things for them is that somebody is going to do testing on Roundup. Because even in their most private emails to each other, they're talking about nobody's ever tested this, and we know that the formulation is much, much more toxic than the glyphosate. Because the formulation has all these surfactants in it and adjuvants in it that are intended to allow the glyphosate to slip through the bark of the plant and through the coating of the plant, and they allow also those same chemicals also enable that molecule to penetrate the blood-brain barrier and get into the human system, and they're toxic themselves. And the synergistic toxicity is something they've been able to keep the regulatory agencies from ever looking at that. The only thing they ever test is pure glyphosate. Nobody ever gets to test Roundup. And of course, Roundup has many different formulations, but they're all much more toxic than glyphosate.
Perfect. Yeah, so he wouldn't say something completely different than that, would he? At 9:30 Eastern time last night, our Secretary of Health and Human Services, who we keep being told is one of the good guys and is actually getting stuff done, and I'd like to believe that stuff, and then I read things like this, and the only thing I can take away from it is, this is a lot of words, folks. I'm going to show them on the screen here real quickly. That is a lot of words to say that you're flipping compromised. Right? You're making me agree with people from Midas Touch and Midas Media. RFK Jr. says, I will always tell the American people the truth. Pesticides and herbicides are toxic by design, engineered to kill living organisms, and then we apply them across millions of acres and allow them into our food system. We put Americans at risk. Sounds like we're all on the same page here. Chemical manufacturers have paid tens of billions of dollars to settle cancer claims linked to their products, and many agricultural communities reported elevated cancer rates and chronic disease. I'm on board with you. Unfortunately, we could probably summarize the rest of this as, too bad we don't care, there's a lot of money in it. But that's not what I'm going to read. Our agricultural system depends heavily on these chemicals. The United States represents 4% of the world population, but we use roughly 25% of the pesticides. That still seems like a problem. If these inputs disappeared overnight, crop yields would fall, food prices would surge, and America would experience a massive loss of farms. Even beyond what we've been witnessing today, the consequences would be disastrous. That is kind of like, hey man, the Dow's at 50 thou to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't understand this, but like, wasn't that what you were supposed to be doing for the last year, is trying to like put the places in, removing the regulations, getting out of the way of local farmers, incentivizing people with like not having government waste in the way? Nah, let's go ahead and just get the big chemical companies taken care of. I support President Trump's executive order to bring agricultural chemical production back to the United States and end our near total reliance on adversarial nations. Sure, but that's not what we're talking about here, is it? His EO protects two pillars of national strength, our readiness and our food supply. When hostile actors control critical inputs, then they threaten the security of the American people. The Trump administration will secure these supply chains to ensure or to eliminate that vulnerability. Cool. It's interesting because the other vulnerability we found out during COVID was like all the pharmaceuticals that we're not producing here. One, why are we on so many pharmaceuticals? I don't know about you guys, but like I'm 44 years old and I take none. I occasionally take Advil, and when there's a lot of stuff in the air, I'll take a Zyrtec. That's the entirety of my pharmaceutical experience. And I only do that. Why? Is it because I have like super good genes, or that I've never done anything dangerous in my life, or that I didn't live like a maniac when I was younger and in the military? No, it's not. It's simply because I don't take medicine to fix problems. If I put on weight, then I try to figure out, hey, what's wrong with my diet? What do I need to cut out? Oh, I eat too much sugar, which I do. Yeah, I should probably try to eliminate some of that midsection. Maybe I could up my cardio game. So now I do cardio 4 to 5 times a week. I don't like doing cardio. I don't like sitting on a bike and pedaling and like sweating my face off, but I do it because I've got kids and I got to be able to keep up with them. When I go to a doctor at 44 years old, which I haven't been to in probably 6 years, if I went to a doctor, they're going to say, what prescription medications are you on? None. RFK Jr. theoretically was the guy that understood that this was a problem. I think he talked about it a whole bunch. As Americans embrace anxiety treatments, RFK Jr. derides medications. So that's the problem. How much of this stuff is funded by pharmaceutical? I wonder if there's any pharmaceutical ads that we can see sitting here. The Future Society, Inclusive Futures, Shared Societies. This is over on CBS News. That's not good. I don't know what that is. Ears won't stop ringing. I'm trying to see what kind of ads they have here as I scroll through this thing. Oh, there you go. Voted Austin's best pain doctor, preferred spine and pain. These things are, pain clinics. So they dispense meds that will help people get opiates. Cool. That's really useful. What else is on here for ads? I'm just going to look at the ads. New aerosol method destroys cancer in the abdomen. That seems like it would be good. These are the ads. Assisted living. Cool. All right. Anyway, I'm just kind of curious what that looks like. Sorry, I went on a little side there. After a grueling year of chemotherapy and surgery and radiation treatment to treat breast cancer, some lady was anxious, not the manageable hum that has long been a part of her life, but something deeper and more distracting. And so rather than go to church or find a counselor or a pastor or praying on her knees, rather than walking or hiking or experiencing whatever else is going on here, Singapore Airlines, and taking a trip where she could go and do a retreat, she said, every little ache, like my knee hurts, made me worry that this is the end of the road for me. Cool. She's a 40-year communications director in New York City. I wonder if she's married. My guess is not. You're 40. You're taking anxiety meds for all your problems. Got it. Cool. Because your knee hurts. So she was doing serotonin boosting stuff. Lexapro. That sounds amazing. Do Lexapro. I love it. It's been great. It helped me manage. Is this like a pharmaceutical ad? Is that what's going on here? Look how happy she looks there, sitting like a cat looking out her window. No ring on the ring finger, unmarried lady. Yeah, maybe that's the cause of your anxiety, is that you're not living the way that you're supposed to. Sorry, like it sucks that you're in that situation. I don't want it for you. The proportion of American adults who took anxiety meds jumped from 11% in 2019 to 14.3% in 2024. Good thing we're going to give them more Roundup, huh? With the most increase during the COVID pandemic. Oh, weird. Who was in charge when that happened? The last two guys. 8 million more people, bringing roughly 38 million people with sharp increases among young adults, especially those with a college degree, holy moly, and adults who identify as LGBTQ+. So sexually deviant young people with a college degree are having a hard time accepting reality. It's almost like traditional marriage and going back to church might actually help you out. My wife struggled with anxiety for a long time. I don't talk about this because it's not my business to talk about as much, but let me just say, as someone who lived with someone who suffered from serious anxiety for a long time, the thing that I've noticed over the years, in the last 13 years that we've been married, the first thing was getting married, locked down some of the anxiety that she had, and it was still there for sure. And then she had kids, 1, and then 2, and then 3rd, and then a 4th. And I don't think she still has anxiety, I'm sure, just like everybody has certain things that we're anxious about. The world is kind of unsettling, but she doesn't have time for like the navel gazing narcissism that you see this lady sitting here doing, like looking out and putting on her favorite comfy sweats and tracksuits so she could take a picture for the health news section of CBS. Who's got time for that? I mean, you don't if you're a parent. You really don't. Just saying. It's interesting to watch certain people like get completely pegged. We've got neighbors that we've been meeting in our little cul-de-sac, and some of them have recently moved in, and they've had some absolutely devastating life experiences that could leave you with crippling anxiety. And maybe they take meds too. But they held it together. I talked to 2 different women who said, I used to like to drink a lot. I enjoyed having the taste of alcohol, whatever it was, wine, liquor. And then I lost my spouse. And I realized that I had to keep it together for my kids. It turns out having that biological imperative, like there are plenty of people who go off the rails, but I'm seeing as many people like now who are taking that responsibility and going, when I have children, someone more important than me matters. It's a reason why having a single 46-year-old frat boy idiot for FBI director is a problem. It's a reason why when people don't have skin in the game for kids in the future, and I'm not attacking individuals who don't have kids, I'm just telling you, it's a different experience when you're like, this country is jacked and it's not about me. I'm looking at a 5-year-old who knows that the government is our enemy. Do you know how freaking crazy it is to like sit down and have your 5-year-old say something like that at the dinner table, or your 8-year-old kind of tell you like, hey, is the government going to come after us? It's like, yeah, probably. Are there poisons in the food? Yeah. Your mom is neurotic about it, and she's not wrong. And luckily, we're not doing anything about it. It's just wild to me when I see that. And then there's the imminent stuff that happens over and over again. Guys, if you're watching over here, I don't know if I've done this recently, so I'll just do it again. If you're watching on YouTube, like, Rumble, subscribe wherever you're at. Watch us over on Spotify. You guys may hear a Spotify ad right now. It's at KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's a free app. You should check it out if you haven't done it. If you've heard me say it a million times and you haven't done it, just do it. Check it out. It's good for you. It's the best way to watch the show. All right, let's pull that down. There's the imminent stuff that's happening as well. We got a long way to go. How about this? How about instead of guzzling beer and spraying it on people who are not your friends because you're a government official who took a private jet to go hang out at the Olympics, maybe you should be worried about what kind of stuff is your agency not catching? You know, like dudes who are 21 that are probably on medications that we're just talking about right here, that are living in some jacked up scenario, and then they decide to quote unquote go missing, grab a shotgun, and then try to kill the president of the United States. That seems like a thing. I thought we had an agency that was catching all the threats. That's what they do now. They're not setting up people. They're catching the actual threats. Every single time one of these things happen, Secret Service just gunned down this guy at MaraLago. Every single time it happens, what I'm reminded of is the fact that that person made it through the radar. And they all do. Because our agencies are too busy trying to cover their own asses and excuse their own behavior to actually do the job that you thought they were doing, which is to tell you that they probably don't need to be there. Guess what? The local sheriff's department, in most cases, the physical security of Secret Service at MaraLago was able to solve this problem. Here's Peter Ducey talking about it.
Shot and killed an armed man who unlawfully entered the perimeter at MaraLago early this morning, at 1:30 this morning. The Associated Press is out with some new details right now. They have named, and we have confirmed the name of the suspect, 21-year-old Austin Tucker Martin. According to the Associated Press in this bulletin that just crossed, he was reported missing by his family a few days ago. Investigators believe he headed south and picked up a shotgun along the way, and they think that because they found a box for the shotgun in his car. The FBI is right now asking people that live near MaraLago to check their doorbell cameras, check any cameras that they have in their yards, so they can figure out exactly how this guy got into the area. But it is now believed, according to the AP, that he might have piggybacked behind a vehicle entering MaraLago lawfully when the gate opened. For more on this right now, let's go to Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson. He is at the White House where President Trump was while this all unfolded overnight. Lucas.
Good morning, Peter. President Trump was at the White House this weekend. He was not in Palm Beach where this incident occurred, and the Secret Service says they were assisted by Palm Beach County deputies who assisted in shooting the suspect, as you mentioned, named 21-year-old Austin Martin of North.
Notice, again, sheriff deputies involved in the situation, as usual. Your local law enforcement for the win. It doesn't mean you don't have corruption at the local level. It just means, wouldn't it be nice if we thought that the people that were supposed to be using all these surveillance tools to actually stop actual threats, if they actually did it? And the answer is they can't. And what do they say? They never tell you, we're unable to do the mission that we said. We've taken all these tools. We're looking into it. We've compromised your freedom. And so we're going to actually ask Congress to disapprove these tools. And they're like, no, we need more of them. We need more funding. We need more money. We need more people. We didn't cover it last week, guys, but I got some inside intel, and it was actually released by Reuters, of all places, that the FBI currently is abandoning the scrutiny program that they had, and they are going to make it easier for people that are current non-FBI agent staff. This is your professional staff. These are your attorneys that work there in the law, the general counsel area. This is your analytical wing. All of these people lean left, by the way. They're removing the requirement that they do a very difficult interview. And the interview was really weird. It was one of the weirdest interviews I've ever done. And I've done a lot of interviews for jobs and so on. FBI interview for phase 2 is very hard. They're removing it. They're also removing the other parts of phase 2, which is a writing sample. So essentially, they just take an aptitude test and then a PT test, and then they get to be FBI agents. The easiest thing I did, I went in and took the test for the FBI, what's called phase 1. It took me like whatever it is, an hour, hour and a half, something like that. I walked out and they're like, great, you passed. If that's what's all that it took to go be an agent, that would have been really scary. Instead, what they had to do is you got to do these interviews, you got to do these meet and greet things, you got to sit down with some agents who get to vet you and write up their opinions on what kind of person you are. You sit at a panel with 3 current FBI agents, which is not all that fun, and they're not allowed to give you any feedback. They ask you these like standardized questions. You're supposed to read something and then give a writing sample that says like, do a test on this thing. What are we doing instead? We're taking the exact people that are prioritized, the kind of DEI types, the people that are hired for who they are and not for what they know, and we're going to make them the fastest and easiest route to being an FBI agent. It's literally the thing that's wrong with the agency. And guess what? Under Kash Patel, that's what's happening. Are those the people that are going to be like, you know what? I have a lot of other experience and this looks like really problematic. Like I can see from my previous jobs in either law enforcement, in the military, my previous jobs in being a regular person in private industry that this is going to suck. Nah. And you know who's running these things? The leftists, the same ones that were in there under Biden that people like, this has never been fixed. So you're wondering, oh, are they going to go, hey, look, we have a lot of security failures. The FBI director wasn't even in the right country. We had some dude that like was just able to jump in behind another car and get onto MaraLago, which is where the president lives some of the time. Is that an issue? Nah. We just need more security tools. Here's what's funny. I listen to guys all the time, people that I don't agree with. I think Nick Fuentes makes some absolutely atrocious social commentary about women. I think he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about because he's probably like a 30-year-old homosexual man who is pretending that he's not. But he doesn't know what it's like to have a kid. He doesn't know what it's like to have a wife. He knows nothing about women as far as I can tell. So there's that. But he's not wrong when he starts making comments about something that's going to be really scary and coming for us all. And so I want you to hear this and ignore the man if you don't like him, or like him if you like him. I don't really care. Listen to the words of the messenger, not the actual who the messenger is, but what is the message? And the message is, because of the failure of this administration, and that goes from all the different things, like trying to tell us that cocaine in the White House is important, tell us that it's really patriotic that Kash Patel sprayed beer on people, like tell us that it's totally cool that we have glyphosate because RFK Jr. is on our side, and even though he's flip-flopped on his position, he's not compromised, like all that crap. Again, if people were putting their spikes on and kicking ass, nobody would care. But what we're going to get is what Nick Fuentes is talking about. 2028 is going to be rough, and I think that January of 2027, when we see the midterm switch, I think these next 2 elections are going to be brutal for people that are GOP. Now, as someone sitting on the outside that's like an independent conservative, it's not good for me, but it does seem like pretty obvious. It seems like it's a really easy bet that we're going to see government agencies mutiny against the people that are there, and they're going to just take back what has never been taken from them. The de-weaponization, which, by the way, hold on, I almost have it on I think I have it on the screen. There it is. What number was it? Number 9 of Agenda 47, end the weaponization of government against the American people. Because that did not happen, I think Nick is correct in this particular assessment. Listen, take it for what it's worth.
And now we seriously have to contend with the possibility that in 2028, we get Democrats on steroids. We get Democrats with a vengeance. You do understand that if a Democrat won in 2024, they would be on the back foot. If a Democrat won in 24 and they picked up where Biden left off, they would be really in a tough spot. They would not be aggressive. They could not be aggressive because they would have no mandate and no legitimacy, and nobody would support them. So you would have gotten a very soft, weak, flaccid, incompetent Democrat administration, and you would have had like a revolution in 28 for a fascist, for a Nazi. Instead, Trump has been elected and he has failed at everything except for antagonizing our enemies. The only thing that he has succeeded at doing is provoking our enemies just enough that now they want to kill us. And now they're going to have enough juice to do it. They're going to have enough political mandate to do it, political capital. Trump has not succeeded in DOGE, has not Schedule F'd 50,000 employees, has not ended all the wars, has not massively deported anybody. He doesn't even want to build the wall anymore. They haven't started building the wall. They don't even want to build the wall anymore. That stuff just isn't even happening. The one thing he succeeded in doing is royally pissing off our enemies that actually are willing to and know how to use government power.
Yeah, that's right. And then he also apparently is like causing more chaos or is letting people that are in his administration do stupid things, which may be the cause of chaos. It's coming from ABC News. I saw some of you guys in the chat asking. Mexico fears more violence after the army kills the leader of a powerful Jalisco cartel. Should we do the accent? It feels like we should. Several Mexican states have canceled school. Local and foreign governments are warning their citizens to stay inside after widespread violence erupted following the army's killing of a leader of the New Generation cartel, potentially with the help of American forces. It was supposed to look like a Mexican force hit, and that would be fine if it was just government internally. But it sounds like I've seen some reporting indicating that the United States government may have been involved in the attack there on this particular drug trafficking kingpin. And then when that happens, then the cartels are like, hey, if it's just the Mexican government versus us, like, we'll buy you off, we'll do our thing. But if you're going to turn on us, then we're going to just start causing chaos in the streets. And so we got a little video of what that looked like, because it doesn't look real fun. Let's just play a quick clip. Here we go.
This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, coming at you here live in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Just had the military driving past me, and as I understand it, I should not be around anywhere where the police or the military are, because they are the target right now. As you can see, this whole place is like deserted right now because there's burning cars back there, burning cars right here, still smoldering. And the situation is incredibly intense. As I'm sure you've already heard, there was a top
look at the fires
drug lord cartel member, El Mencho, who has been killed. I believe there was a $15 million bounty on this man's head, and he is now dead. And that has caused this whole situation to pop off. The place looks like an absolute war zone right now, folks. Cartel has been setting up blockades in the streets, stopping cars. A whole bus was set on fire. You've got cartel members who literally look like the military. These guys are serious. These guys mean business. Costco was set on fire. A hospital was under attack. People running for their lives. There was the Guadalajara airport that was under attack. People literally running all over the place, screaming and crying. The Puerto Vallarta airport as well.
Okay, I'm going to leave Dan on the screen here for a second. If they burn a Costco, that nothing good is going on right there. Some people are commenting that looks a lot like Minneapolis. It looks like Minneapolis, except there's a beach, so that's a little bit different. This drug kingpin known as El Mencho is one of the fastest growing criminal networks in Mexico, notorious fentanyl trafficker, methamphetamines, cocaine to the United States, staging brazen attacks to the United States government and other government officials who try to challenge it. He was killed in a shootout at his home. That's not good, in so much as it's causing a lot of chaos. President of Mexico urged calm, and authorities announced late Sunday they'd cleared most of the more than 250 cartel roadblocks across 20 states. President was expected to address the situation. I guess we'll keep an eye on that. White House confirmed that the United States provided intelligence support. Oops. So we did. And then we probably also involved like some on the ground embedded stuff, but we weren't supposed to talk about. But it sounds like that information got out, whether it was Delta or some other version of some sort of tiered one, direct assets. That's usually what happens. If we give the intel, we usually bring people to kind of help make sure the intel gets to where it goes. So there you have it. It looks kind of wild. Like some of these pictures of stuff burning looks intense. For those of you saying that's what Chicago looks like on a Saturday morning, I don't think that's actually true, but it is kind of funny. In any case, there's chaos in the world. It's not preventing World War III and solving the problems. And look, I think if this was the only thing that was going on, the crazy thing is while that's popping off, and that is a major domestic potential threat because that's not far, that's our nearest southern border. How many states do we have? California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas. We all have major borders running across that. Our FBI director spraying beer on men, by the way, not on strippers, although we'll leave that alone. He's spraying beer on them. And then the other piece of it is the tariff situations. This is the other piece that goes outside of our borders. We had a major change as far as what the Supreme Court said can happen regarding tariffs. And we have such a petty guy. Like, look, sometimes Donald Trump is great. Sometimes he's not. This is like probably his most worst or his most ridiculous moment. He called into C-SPAN to talk to the, in their like phone, whatever you call it, their phone-in show. So he could have a discussion about tariffs under a pseudonym. Like the lack of seriousness of the president of the United States calling into C-SPAN, which essentially nobody watches, so he can like voice his disapproval with their opinions. And then the fact that his tariffs were struck down, and what was his thing to do? He said, we're just going to reinstate the tariffs. I've got one clip of him doing the call-in. The call-in is actually like, it would be hilarious if it isn't so sad. Check this out. Ready?
Well, this is John Barron, and this is the worst decision you ever have in your life, practically. Jack's going to agree with me, right? But this is a terrible decision. And you have Hakeem Jeffries, he's a dope, and you have Chuck Schumer, who can't cook a cheeseburger. Of course these people are happy. But true Americans will not be happy. And you have the woman earlier, I assume she's a woman, she's a Democrat, but she said she's disgraced. She's devastated.
All right,
by
John.
this.
We'll go to Chester, who's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Democratic caller.
You guys think that wasn't? That's John Barron, right? John Barron, the name that Donald Trump has used a bunch of times. Was that a impersonator? Was that actually Donald Trump? Is that like the silliness that we're dealing with? It didn't sound like the impersonators that I've heard. I've listened to a fair of them. It certainly wasn't Sean Farish. Sean Farish doesn't actually, he repeats himself and he's not actually all that innovative. That sounded like a pretty calm, kind of like tired Donald Trump. Maybe it wasn't. Here's what his administration is pushing. They got struck down. Then they decided to attack the Supreme Court and say the Supreme Court is terrible. It's totally bad. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to bump up. We're not going to give refunds of the $140 billion in tariffs that we collected, which is not enough to offset anything. We're sure as hell not shutting down the IRS. Remember, that was one of the things. We're going to make America great again by not having the IRS. Everybody's on board with that. Everybody that voted for Trump is like, yeah, that's what we want. Instead, we're going to bump the tariffs up across the board. So here's a fluffy slopaganda Fox News hit with Steve Miller telling us this. I've gone from like, I kind of like what he has to say, the Steve Miller stuff, to like, yeah, you're just all shitty actors and this is all theater. You're just as fake as maybe that impersonator or that real guy that could have been the president.
Well, this is John Barron, and you have...
That's not it, is it? Here he is. Here's Stephen Miller.
Justice Thomas said so brilliantly and eloquently, the language of the statute is clear. Under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the president has the authority to regulate foreign trade. And going back to the founding of our country, the term regulate has always meant and included the power to levy duties. But here's the good news, Laura. As cowardly, as horrendous as the Supreme Court ruling was, as poorly as it reflects on John Roberts' court and the continued torturing of our statutes and our Constitution, here's the good news. The court also affirmed the president has the authority under Section 301, Section 232, Section 122, Section 338, and many other provisions of federal law that the president can levy tariffs on foreign nations. So his program will not only be fully reconstituted, but it will be expanded. And one more point, Laura. The Supreme Court also affirmed that under IEPA, the president has authority to restrict, impede, deny, license, or even fully embargo any foreign trade. So the net result of all of this is we're going to keep and grow the tariffs to bring back American manufacturing, which keeps prices low by incentivizing products to be made here in America. But it also means that President Trump has even more tools when it comes to dealing with foreign countries that undermine our security.
And that, along with the visuals of utterly unserious people in incredibly serious positions, is going to be why the midterms are 100% lost. And I have zero doubt of that being the case. And I also think that these people are going to see impeachments. I don't know which ones are going to get done first, but I think that in January of 27, we'll start off with the impeachments. I think they're going to tie up Trump's agenda. I think you're going to see people in the cabinet and the sub-cabinet positions that are going to be impeached. Some of them will have to resign. Many of them will be investigated by the agencies that they were in charge of, to include the current FBI director. And all they got to do is say, what manufacturing has come back to the United States? The prices are going to be lower when. And if you just want one example of like how ridiculous this administration points itself out to be and how impotent it is, we can take, even though I don't think it's constitutional, I think it's terrible and I think we should have declared war, but we can take a military operation into a foreign nation and snatch a head of state out of his bed while he's sleeping with no American casualties and extradite him back and put him in New York and have him stand trial for whatever the crap we want. And there is an elderly woman named Tita Peters who is still sleeping in a jail cell, even though Donald Trump has gone out there and declared that she has been pardoned and that she should be saved and that she should be released immediately. And what do? Nothing. And we've got 12 J6ers who still didn't get a pardon, even though we've pardoned dipshits like Jake Lang, and we've let people who are absolutely guilty of the felonies that they were charged with for January 6th. We've got people who are combat veterans and Purple Heart recipients and men who retired honorably from our military that we are not paying simply because Donald Trump doesn't actually have the wherewithal to actually use the power that he has. So we're using power in stupid ways like up in the tariffs. Look, either you do it or you don't. What did he do? He laid them on, then he walked them all back, and then they waited around, then they all went through, and then it went up this court process. The court says, well, the way you did it was unconstitutional. And they said, aha, but now we have all these other ones. And what are those all a result of? National security tools being used that are supposed to be in a temporary way, and they're all being used because Congress doesn't do the freaking job of Congress. I mean, we have an unserious country where the legislative branch and the Article 1 powers to be able to levy tariffs, they're not being used. And they ceded them to the executive. When we undermine the structure of what our Constitution actually set up, where the powers are supposed to reside was really important to the founders. You guys are going to think this is crazy, but when they went out and laid out like, hey, we should give this power to this particular branch because this is what it'll save. The checks and balances that you learned about when you were a freaking child in middle school, learning about the basics of the American system. The checks and balances were meant that those powers were supposed to offset the capabilities so that we didn't have tyranny, that we didn't have dumb actions that were being unilaterally described on or unilaterally decided on, rather. And Congress decided, going back 100 years, that's really hard to do. We'd much rather do show hearings and campaigning. We would not like to do the job of legislating and line item appropriations, which, by the way, our current Speaker of the House said he was going to do. So whenever I look at these people and I look at anybody who's an incumbent, and if they voted for any of the omnibus or the minibus or the continuing resolution and all the bullshit that they promised they were going to get rid of, they didn't. And I also look back and say, the one thing that would have been really nice is that de-weaponization of government. I would have really liked it if the people who said there's a big problem in this country and we need brave men and women to stand up and say what is wrong, regardless of what team you're on. Wouldn't it have been nice if we could get human beings to back those who are in a tough spot when their governmental agency came after them because now, quote unquote, we have the power? I had Seb Gorka block and say that he's ashamed that he ever thought I was a patriot last night. You know what? Fuck you, Seb Gorka. You fucking dummy. You either had terrible judgment back then or you're a dope right now. But all these people that go out and do this stuff where they go out and go, I thought you were on our team because you used to say the things that made me so proud and now I'm very frustrated. No, I've always had the same freaking perspective. It's the same guys out there that are changing their tune because of what's convenient for them. I didn't know that the name of the book that Mark Levin wrote, you know, the Zionistic throbbing war boner that wants to cuddle up to Lindsey Graham and get parachuted in Tehran. I didn't know what the name was. I'm going to show you because I found this clip over the weekend and I was like, holy crap. I forgot. Mark Levin took an entire article that I wrote for Tracy Beans when nobody in the mainstream media had the balls to put it out there, talking about how Catholics were being targeted by our FBI. By the way, the same people that did that work, they still there. You know what? The analyst that wrote the piece that said radical traditionalist Catholics could be white supremacists, that guy can go and apply to be a flippin' FBI agent now, and he won't even have to do an extra interview. Do you know that? Ain't that some things? Mark Levin wrote a book about how the Democrats are trying to destroy America. Well, newsflash, Mark, they're all trying to do it. Your party and the other party, which is why the people that cross the aisle and the bacon cheeseburger nationalist types and the people that are just otherwise independent, that just don't want poison on their food, or the people that thought like, hey, if we're going to do like weird stuff, like let's do it the right way. Like, why don't you declare war before you go and kidnap a foreign president? Why don't you just like do the thing like make America constitutional again? Why don't you stop telling me that Israel is my freaking biggest ally when I know for a fact, having been a counterintelligence agent for the FBI, that they're not, because we had investigations into those a-holes and they were stealing stuff for a long time. I didn't realize that just like Mark Levin would absolutely go, would disown his connection to me, he also published my entire article to fit a chapter in his book. And then he cites it as though it is his book. I'm not even kidding to you. I was walking through the Blaze headquarters when I first heard this. I was with Steve Baker at the time. What an interesting thing that happens over the 3 years. watching who gets in power and how little they do about it. And how many effusive scumbags that are in the Trump administration that are like, Seraphin, a great patriot, American hero. It's like, that's all too much. That's not it. I'm just a guy that saw something wrong and I said what it was because I was trained the right way. But it turns out standing by yourself against the crowd, whether it be the other people's crowd or be your people's crowd, it's always the same. Being a whistleblower is a universal experience. There's a reason why Marcus Allen right now, his family's about to sell their house because they can't figure out how to support themselves. And I don't know all the specifics of it, and he hasn't shared them all with me, but I know that he can't find a job. I know that Steve Friend can't get hired in his chosen profession of law enforcement, despite having like almost 15 years of full experience. I know that I can never work in law enforcement again, that I gave up my anonymity. And then there's these assholes out there that'll take your work, they'll put it in their freaking book, they'll go out there and grift for millions, and then they act like you're the problem, that you keep saying the same thing. And what was the first thing I ever said? It's not about partisan politics. I could give a shit about the political parties in this country. I'm absolutely never going to care what a Republican says because they're a Republican. I will look at them and say, are you a good person? Are you like Doc Pete Chambers, who says, I serve this country, I'm an honorable human being. When people in Texas are dying, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to try to help them because I have a skill set to do it? Or are you going to be like a scumbag, like Governor Hot Wheels? And then who goes out there and supports him? I'm watching Turning Point USA support like the worst people and the most status quo like losers in this state, because nobody that said that they were part of the real thing, they ever were part of it. And those of us that are, apparently we're the problem. I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed that I ever thought Seraphin was a patriot. And then there's this yelling idiot. Watch this.
Is everybody lying? All the whistleblowers from the FBI, the whistleblowers from the IRS? Are they all lying?
No, we weren't, Mark. You're a liar.
I don't think they're all lying. Let's continue. There's more from my book. Although the FBI Director Christopher Wray and Attorney General Garland claim ignorance and distance himself from another scandal, this time specifically targeting traditionalists in the Catholic Church. Here's what we know thanks to Kyle Seraphin, a former FBI special agent, federal whistleblower, U.S. Air Force vet, who uncovered a now infamous January 23, 2023 document.
You want to know the funniest thing about that document? It was cited in multiple different congressional hearings. Not once did they want to hear what I had to say because I would have roasted all these dipshits.
Uncovered. He said the FBI's Richmond division would like to protect Virginians from the threat of white supremacy, which it believes has found a home within Catholics who prefer the Latin Mass. An intelligence analyst within the Richmond field office of the FBI released in a newly finished intelligence product dated January 3, 2023 on racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and their interests in radical traditionalist Catholics, or RTCs, they call them. The document assesses with high confidence the FBI can mitigate the threat of radical traditionalist Catholics by recruiting sources within the Catholic Church. While most Americans are familiar with criminal investigations which explore the allegation or information that a crime has been committed, many are not familiar, ready, with intelligence investigations.
Oh, wait. That's been the same thing that I've been beating on for over 3 years right now. Yeah. It's the same problem. It's the same FBI. They're still doing that stuff. Guys, did they fix it? Nah, they didn't fix that. Watch this. If you watch this program for a while, you'll remember these words talking about the difference between linear and circular cases.
Contrast to the linear nature of a criminal case, counterintelligence and counterterrorism cases follow a circular path that can continue indefinitely without any articulated goal. In other words, you don't need probable cause. You don't need the predicates. You just want an investigation. Indeed, information is the goal of these types of cases.
He's literally just reading my entire article, paragraph by paragraph by paragraph. Maybe he didn't prepare for his show on that day, but then he put it all in his book too, which is also funny.
Many counterterrorism cases never articulate or uncover a single criminal act. If they continue in order to develop more understanding of the threat landscape or threat pictures, as quoted in this document. Intelligence investigations often beget more investigation. Now, the relevance of this product should not be lost on the reader. He says the danger presented by the FBI initiative is grave. He explains that products like this can be used to support opening of information-only cases, and there's no reason to expect radical traditionalist Catholics are the end point of this train. They will be the beginning. And he points out the beginning. Orthodox Jews, Muslims, whatever they want. That's why they need a building bigger than the Pentagon, with all kinds of new technology and so forth. Says this is what a politicized FBI looks like and should not be tolerated if Americans expect to enjoy the protections of our Bill of Rights. Once again, Biden and the Democrat administration, I argue, plead ignorance. Remember
Yeah, it's not about the Biden or the Democrat organization. Democrats, what does it say? Democrats something. The Democrat Party Hates America was the name of his book. What a dipshit. Seriously. Mark Levin, you fool. Isn't that interesting? First of all, he read a lot of my article. He put it all in his book and just put quotation marks around the paragraph with like little pieces of it. And then he took the wrong information. It's not about the Democrat Party, you fools. It's about the fact that our government doesn't serve the people that actually pay for the government, which is how you end up with a guy spraying beer all over Team USA simply because he's really excited about USA hockey.
Breaking exclusive.
That's how you get this. Spraying and putting a freaking gold medal on the damn FBI director in Italy. He's in Italy. What the hell is he doing there? Oh, he's serving himself the same way the rest of the FBI does. The same way Mark Levin apparently didn't understand what that was all about. We set ourselves up for a significant amount of danger because we keep funding an agency that doesn't care about the actual mission. The task and the purpose are divorced. And just like promise number 9 from Trump's Agenda 47, what were we supposed to do? De-weaponize. That would mean getting rid of all that stuff. I've said the same thing. That was from February of 2023, back when I wasn't a problem for Dan Bongino. I wasn't a problem for Kash Patel. I wasn't a problem for Seb Gorka, where everybody wanted that. John Solomon. They all wanted to call and ask me questions. They all wanted to have me on their programs. When I was a hero FBI whistleblower, I'm the same dude. I still hate all this stuff. I hate government for what it is, for what it's become. And I think it's a necessary evil in so much as we have to have it. And do we get anybody that has any freaking principles? No. We get people that celebrate themselves. They try to theatrically present this slopaganda garbage. They give you this. Let's see if we can go back to it from the beginning.
Cocaine and aliens on deck.
There's cocaine and aliens. Like, what is that shit? Like, who watches that and goes like, yeah, this is what's up. I'm about to learn the news of America. It's going to be rock songs and cocaine and aliens and feed me the garbage. I just want to believe it. Have they found Nancy yet? I don't know. She might be rotting in the desert, so we're going to send the FBI director to Italy. Like, this is the dumbest shit. And we're living in a time where, like, I got up this morning and I was like, you know what? I don't even want to do a show. I don't even like doing stuff when it's this dumb. Oh, you're a black pillar. You're just out here. You're just being a doomer. It's like, you're just being a dipshit. You guys had a chance to do something amazing and you failed. And now you're gonna leave us. You're gonna leave us and you're gonna be the first ones to pay. That's the only amusing thing about all of this stuff, guys. Put this chat up on the screen for a second. The only thing that amuses me is that my family now is not going to be the first ones to pay. It's going to go after the people that are so stupid that they had an opportunity. They flushed it down the toilet like complete fools. And they're going to pay the consequences. It's going to be ugly. The next 2 years are going to be ugly. It's not because I want it to be ugly. I can just look at the writing on the wall and go, yeah, look, if you don't clear the drain and then you flush down, you end up with turds on the floor. Well, you flushed and nobody cleared the drain. So it's coming. It's going to be ugly for you guys that are excited. And anybody that gets mad at me, there are people that are mad at the left-wing press for publishing what the FBI and the internal mechanisms of the FBI were sharing. Like, guys, you have an unserious director and you have a mutiny on your hands. And you think it's the problem of the people that published the story? Unbelievable wasted opportunity. Maybe we could also just get distracted about something else. Let's finish up with this. This is fun. How about we get mad about whether or not Tucker Carlson interviewed an American ambassador who is supposed to represent America and instead finds all of his time apologizing for a nation state that is at the very best, at the best case scenario. George Hill would disagree with me on this. The best it could be is a frenemy. Here's the Israel portion for all of you that are caring. Like, I love getting the people that they're like, no, you're focused. I'm like, no, I'm not focused. I've just never heard so much about a group of people that is so small and should have so little in the voting block. They're a negligible voting block in America, 2.5%. Do you know that if you're a Jewish person in America, like, you're not a bacon cheeseburger nationalist, you don't represent the dominant culture, you are a negligible voting block in reality by persons, if it mattered like how much people actually represented a population. And then you get just overwhelmed There's a social media blitzkrieg. There were dozens of people from the quote-unquote MAGA movement that were like slamming on Tucker Carlson, who was their biggest. They loved what he had to say until they didn't. Until he went off the reservation and had some thoughts of his own. Until he didn't work for Fox News and he wasn't given the official slopaganda narrative. I don't agree with Tucker Carlson all the time, but I don't agree with anybody all the time. But I do think he's sensible, and I do think some of the stuff he says is very interesting. Some of the stuff he says is crap. I thought he was like kind of light on Putin. It's like, that wasn't very interesting. Shouldn't it matter that we just evaluate every individual thing that somebody says and says, is that good or bad? Is that true or false? And we don't have to just sit there and cry about whether or not, well, he said something positive, and they keep calling him Quarrelson or Catarlson or something. I see this all the time too. It's like, hey, he's smarter than you are. He's richer than you are. And he still does this stuff. So what is it for? Is he trying to get views? Is he trying to stay relevant? Maybe so. Does he just have the ability to lie out of nowhere? There was this big push that he got grabbed in, pulled into an interrogation room in Israel, which that sounds totally plausible. And then they said, well, this is made up. He didn't actually have that happen. He flew to Israel to interview an American ambassador and then got interrogated, and the guy never even left the freaking airport, which was somehow like that was a slam on him. He flew in to go to the airport. They had a meeting, and the ambassador wants the publicity, so came in and sat down. And this is apparently the story on that. So this was before Kash Patel was spraying beer. This was the scandal that was going to be here for Monday. Ready? Here it goes.
This interview, it was cordial. And at the end, we're set to fly out. We have a time. We have to get out. And the plane is sitting right outside. And we're ready to go. And for some reason, the Israelis still have our passports. There are 5 of us there. And 4 of us are flying out on this plane. One's flying out commercial with our gear. So my business partner and I, which were standing there, we've never left the airport, never went anywhere. But our 2 producers have spent the night before in Tel Aviv. And they're called into rooms and given the 3rd degree. Now, keep in mind, they're about to get on a plane and leave. In fact, we're late. We have to get out of there. We have a slot to get out. And security, whoever this is, won't let them go. So I don't really know what's going on at this point. I'm like, where are our guys? We got to get out of here. So one of them comes out and he says, that was the weirdest experience in my life. They asked me questions about the interview. Who did you speak to? Keep in mind, this was like 8 feet from where we did the interview. Well, the U.S. ambassador. I'm like, Huckabee, what did you talk about? Why did you ask those questions? Was it a hostile interview? And of course, everything in the diplomatic terminal is taped. Everything in Israel is taped. It's a police state. It's a surveillance state, obviously. You go to Israel, they put software on your phone. Everybody knows this. Okay, they're constantly spying on you more than probably any other country. And so they know the answers to these questions. But they're asking my producer, like, where do you work? How many people work there? Do you go to the office? Where is the office? What are their names? They're doing like an intel op and humiliation exercise on my producer. This isn't security. We're leaving right now. And they're holding his passport. The interrogator is holding the passport in his hand as he's asking these questions. So he's telling me this. And I said, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. Huckabee's gone by this point. You're an American citizen who's just had a conversation with the U.S. ambassador, and some thug is demanding details of that conversation? I hope you didn't answer. And he's like, no, I didn't. I don't know what to say. Meanwhile, our last guy, the youngest man who was traveling with us, our last producer, is still in a room being questioned. So I pull over one of the guys and said, we got to get out of here. So I don't know what this is about. It's outrageous. And there's nothing I can do about this point, but we got to go. And this woman comes up to me and says, look, let's just go. We're going to bring you to the plane and he'll come later. I said, no, it's my producer. He's being interrogated, asked totally over the top, fully inappropriate questions that have nothing to do with it.
I'll post that over on our locals if you guys want to just see that little cut, because it's good. It's probably 5 minutes long. And his breakdown is essentially that there was this info op, which I've seen a similar op going on over the last, let's call it 12 hours, 18 hours. There's an info op where Laura Loomer goes out and some other people that are in the pro sort of like Zionistic, whatever, American accounts And they're all on social media claiming that Tucker Carlson lied. And here's some video of him taking a picture with somebody, which apparently was his driver, which happened right when he got there. It was at the beginning of the trip. But the Israelis provided some overhead security camera shots showing Tucker Carlson taking a picture with someone. They're like, what do you mean we were interrogating him? Look how friendly he is. His life's so good. It's like, well, that was hours before this incident happened. That sounds truly true. That sounds 100%. Like, why would he doesn't need to make that up. Tucker Carlson doesn't need to make that up. And the claim was because he got beat up in the interview by Mike Huckabee, who was defending Israel and not actually seeming to represent the position of Americans, which is really crazy. So we're going to end with a couple of thoughts there. I've got two little clips from that interview, which many of you will not watch the whole thing. I don't have time to watch all of it. I felt like these were two interesting little discussion points. And one of them was Tucker asking about the biblical nature of the claim to the land that Israel has. And then the second one was, does anybody else have claim to land? And Huckabee's answers are just strange to me. Like, I don't think they represent normal people. And then I've got a couple other little fun things to be able to end this thing out as we kind of end up here on the 2-hour mark. Here is the first question is Israel, the state of Israel, the current like civil government of Israel, entitled to conquer the entirety of the Middle East? And it sounds like Mike Huckabee kind of says yes.
You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started on this.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. Mm-hmm. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. Yeah. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
That seems problematic, especially for an American ambassador, I think. The second question was, can other countries do this sort of thing? Do they have the right, and are they entitled to the land on which they're in? And is there such a thing? And he uses Ireland because Ireland's an island. And Huckabee's answer there seems really problematic to me. So there was this big push that Tucker Carlson is the problem. And it's like, well, shouldn't we have an American ambassador that represents American interests and is not out there making arguments on behalf of the nation that they are representing us to? Should their default position be to side with the country that we are sending them there to represent us? And that seems weird. And they keep bringing up Christian Zionism, which I guess we're going to have to discuss in this country in the next couple of years, because it seems like the same sort of, it is a religious buffoonery version of the Kash Patel standing in the locker room. To me, it's nonsensical. It doesn't serve any purpose. It's wrong. And I think at the end of the day, it actually ends up being kind of dangerous because it has people who are otherwise serious doing unserious things. So here's Carlson asking, I think, another totally useful question. If these were the only 2 interactions, how do you say that Huckabee was somehow like professorial? And that was the claim that people were making. And I just looked at it and I went like, I don't care who wins. If people embarrass themselves, I can tell, but this is not embarrassing to the person who did it.
You've spent a lot of time thinking about the right of the Jewish people to their homeland. Do the Irish have the same right to a homeland?
As long as they can defend it. And as long as they,
as long as they can defend it.
But Tucker, here's the point.
Wait a second.
I'm telling you.
Wait, hold on. Now you just flip category. You're the minister here.
Yeah, and I'm telling you.
As long as they can defend it. And if they can't defend it, they lose the right.
Allowing me to tell you that I think that what is very, very special here is that there is a biblical, as well as an ethnic, and a historical So you can take any one, but if you add them all together, biblical, historical, and ethnic, you have a very strong case that the Jewish people are living in a land that is indigenous to them, that has been their historic homeland for 3,800 years.
You can repeat it as
And you can
as
also
often
look
as
in the
you want.
archaeology, the stones cry out.
Okay.
Have you been to the city of David, for example?
I have. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So you know then that.
And I love it.
It's an amazing place.
agree.
It may be the greatest archaeological discovery in all of history because
great.
it's stunning. And they still continue to find things that date the Jewish people to this land archaeologically for 3,800 years.
We can date the British people to their land much longer, thousands of years longer. Stonehenge is 3,000 years older than any building built by the descendants of Abram in this country. And so it's fine. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's right. I'm just wanting you to affirm that right, but it makes you uncomfortable and you won't. And I don't know why.
Because I've never honestly sat down and asked myself, are the lines around the
It's an
United
island, so we know what the
Kingdom-
lines are.
I'm saying, but are those lines, are those rooted in something other than the historical connection? Well, great, then they should have it. But
And
that's
they have a
question.
right to have it. But then you said if they can defend it, and if they can't defend it, they lose the right.
But I didn't say it was exclusive one or the other. I think you're really going off the trail.
I just want to know if these principles apply universally or if they only apply to the people of Israel. And my answer appears to be just the people of Israel. They're the only ones with these rights, and I just reject that.
Just saying. I don't know how you say that's law. So anyway, I found this video and I wanted to share it with you guys. And for those of you that like to get into the comments and tell me whatever you think about one way or another, and I don't really care what side of the debate you're on. If you're trying to make a theological argument, I think you're in a bad spot. The Catholic readings for Mass that went on this weekend were the story of Adam and Eve and the time in the garden and eating from the forbidden tree, the knowledge of good and evil, and the original lie and the fall. Right, and the story of making a choice to try to be like God, and then only receiving death. Remember the promise of Genesis. God essentially says, if you eat from this tree, then you will experience death. And the snake says, no, you will be as God, and you will know what is good and evil as God does. And like people don't learn what is good and evil like God does; they get death. So that was the deal. And then it contrasts with Matthew's gospel, where Jesus is tempted in the desert as we go into Lent, and we're dealing with this first Sunday of Lent, and the story goes something to the effect of the devil comes and tests him 3 times, and he offers him things like comfort, just food, use this, test your God, then throw yourself out. So trust, whether you have a trust in God or whether you can test God. And the last one is power and dominion over earth. And so he gives him all these 3 temptations, and he says, get behind me. So one temptation of man, where man fails, and then we have the culmination, which is the temptation of man as God coming to redeem us, succeeds. This is like the reason why Christianity exists. It's like, well, you look in the Old Testament and you have like the first failings, you have the opening covenant, you have kind of the opening offer of God with human beings, and then you have, if you are a Christian, you believe in the second half of it, which is that there's a fulfillment of these covenant. There's a new covenant, expand covenant, and it's not just certain people, it's all people who decide to accept it. So if you believe any of those things, if you are a Christian, then these like weird debates that we're seeing, and by the way, that's a freaking American ambassador who's making these arguments. And they're not even good theological arguments. And here he is being dismantled by a guy who's sitting on an AI background who just absolutely devastates it. So for those of you that are Christian that want to hear this thing, I think this will be used for your time. And I do even have a palate cleanse at the end of this because we're running up on the limit here. But I want to play this for you.
If Christianity were about defending a flag, Jesus would have picked up a sword. But he didn't. He picked up a cross. And yet somehow a movement that's supposed to follow that man, a man that said, my kingdom is not of this world, has decided that protecting a modern nation state called Israel is the center of Christian duty. That blessing it, defending it, and justifying it at all costs is some holy assignment carved into the marrow of the gospel. But I'll say it plainly, Christianity does not require allegiance to the state of Israel. That's not heresy, that's scripture. In the Bible, Israel was not a place first, it was a person. It was Jacob wrestling with God by a river until dawn, scarred by truth and renamed by grace. Israel meant one who struggles with God, and it became the name of a people, not a flag, not a government, not a modern nation carved out in 1948 by colonial politics and American guilt. The word carried spiritual identity. It meant those called into covenant with God. It had nothing to do with missiles or borders or UN resolutions. When the modern state was named Israel, it was not a return to biblical obedience. It was a calculated decision. An intentional conflation of nationalism with theology. It was branding, and a powerful one because it worked. Because now when people hear Israel, they imagine sacred continuity. They imagine divine appointment. They imagine the Old Testament alive and well in 2025, and they are wrong. The Israel of the Hebrew Scriptures was not a Western-backed nuclear power. It was a wandering tribe, a nation in exile, a people constantly called back to justice, humility, and mercy, and often condemned for chasing empire. The prophets didn't worship Israel. They rebuked it over and over and over again for war, for greed, for turning their back on the poor and the foreigner. You know, the same things modern Israel does with American funding now. The idea that Christians are commanded to bless the state of Israel is not in the Gospels. It is not in the epistles. It is not in the teachings of Jesus Christ. It's in the talking points of televangelists and the foreign policy of end-time grifters. The Gospel does not preach that God's blessings is tied to the modern border of Tel Aviv or the Iron Dome. Jesus never said, "Blessed are those who back Likud." Paul never wrote that all who oppose military action are cursed. The early church wasn't fundraising for defense systems or declaring settlements on stolen land as prophetic fulfillment. And yes, the Old Testament speaks of Israel as God's chosen people. And yes, land was part of that covenant, but in Christian theology, the story shifts. The covenant widens, and the veil tears. And the new Israel, the church, is defined not by soil, but by spirit. Not by war, but by witness. And it is made up of anyone from anywhere who walks in faith. Jew, Gentile, Arab, Roman, enslaved, free, all in one Christ Jesus. The New Testament doesn't tell Christians to defend a country. It tells them to defend the poor, to defend the outcast, to walk with the wounded, to make peace, not justifications for war, to see the face of God not in a flag, but in the suffering child behind the rubble. And yet today, American Christians fly Israeli flags next to crosses as if those things belong together. They equate criticism of the Israeli government with blasphemy. They pretend that military aid is a sacrament and that genocide is somehow covered under the blood of covenant promise. And Christ weeps at that lie, because if the gospel means anything, it means you do not get to use God as a shield for political violence. You do not get to bomb refugee camps and quote Jeremiah. You do not get to drop white phosphorus and call it fulfillment. That's not Christianity, that's idolatry. This doesn't mean you have to hate Israel. It doesn't mean you can't believe in its right to exist, but it does mean that if you are a follower of Christ, your loyalty cannot be to any nation, not even one with a biblical name. Your loyalty is to justice, to truth, to love that doesn't end at a checkpoint or a drone feed. Jesus didn't die so the modern church could become a lobby group. He didn't rise so we could bless bombs. He didn't preach love for the least of these so we could side with whoever has better tanks. And if your church is preaching that blessing Israel is the key to God's favor, then you're not in church. You're in a cult, praying to a carved-up God who only speaks Hebrew and votes Republican. The gospel doesn't ask you to bless a nation. It does ask you to bless the peacemakers, to comfort the mourners, to defend the innocent, and reject violence dressed as virtue. There is no divine nation, there is only divine love. And if you think that love stops at a border fence or a flagpole or the edge of a crater where children used to live, then you don't know Christ at all. Defiance till death.
I never play those things all the way through. I don't know what that was, 4.5 minutes or something, but I can listen to that man talk the way that he said it. There's no emotion in dropping information like that. And that's what regular and honest discussion should be about. It's not emotional. Tucker Carlson tends to get a little more heated on it. But if you listen to an American diplomat saying things that are clearly ridiculous for an American ambassador that is supposed to represent our interest to another nation going in, and then they are basically arguing for the positions of that nation, that is truly problematic. And if he's going to put on a theological vestment and try to act like somehow he has some sort of moral authority because of it, yikes, double yikes. I don't know Mike Huckabee. I don't have any personal grievance against him. He seemed like he was really nice when he interviewed my buddies. I think Steve Friend went out there and did a spot on his show, and that's nice. But just like all these guys, they're all transactional to me. And the minute that it actually serves their political purposes, they'll turn on any of us. They'll turn on me. They'll turn on Steve Friend. They'll turn on you. Most of you won't be in a position where you get to experience it, but I'll just tell you, it is very uncomfortable to find people calling you, praising you, asking of you, requesting your time, puffing up all the things that you may have done, which you thought were normal, and they acted like it was somehow exceptional. And then the minute it doesn't serve their purposes, they immediately turn on you. I'm over here with this. This is my crew. We're the bacon cheeseburger people. I don't care if you don't eat bacon, you're not my people. If you don't eat beef, you're not my people. If you're scared of dairy, if you're afraid of eating a freaking bun because it has gluten in it, like, you're not my people. Dominant culture of America, that's where I want to be. That is the center line from 30 years ago. And I still think that's where the bulk of the American people sit. They're not people that are Zionists. They sure as hell don't like sit there and tell you that they care tons about what some other foreign country is about. Many of them don't even know where that foreign country is. Even if they've heard the name, they couldn't put it on a map. I'm actually fine with that. It'd be nice if we did America first. Oh shit, that was like a winning campaign slogan. It'd be seriously nice if we did that. We stopped pretending that allies that are not allies were allies simply because it like fits somebody's budget or somebody's military aid package is going to go and they're going to be enriched by it. Like, I don't want any of that. Grosses me out. So, in that spirit, I have a palate cleanse for you. I appreciate all of you guys who are watching. Make sure you guys are supporting the show very easily. It costs you nothing to do a thumbs up. You can do that anywhere. Thumb up, like. I don't say smash anything because it's just a button. Just lightly click it would be fine. Rumble, YouTube, do it on X if you can find us there. Follow us on locals at KyleSeraphin.com if you guys want to support the program. If you want to be part of the community and other like-minded people, you guys can hash out the merits of putting egg on your bacon cheeseburger as well. I don't mind about that. If you want to find us on Spotify, it's KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's the easiest way to get to it. And in fact, you will get the best user experience if you're a listener. If you're missing out on any of the videos, sometimes it's nice to see what's going on and see someone's mouth move along with it. You can do that at KyleSeraphinShow.com. It takes you to Spotify, which is free, audio, video. You can skip around. You can go fast. You get chapters. You get AI transcripts. Wherever you're at it, subscribe, give us a like, share it with a friend. Whatever part, feel free to clip anything you guys want if you ever want to. You're always welcome to do that. Should I give you a palate cleanse? I feel like we need one. As we start this week, which has been kind of a heavy week to get started. I mean, I felt heavy when I got started. Here is something that I held on to from the weekend as well. Found this, and this is me. This is probably many of you. This is Hugh Grant. Who knew? Kind of weak, soft Brit represents a lot of the thoughts that I have, and here it is.
One enormous pet peeve, that's all I do. I walk around the streets peeving. I don't like people walking slowly. I don't like people with backpacks. I don't like people with backpacks on their front. I don't like people with backpacks and water bottles. I don't like water bottles. What's the whole water bottle thing? Why do my children have to go to school with a water? They have to cart water across London. What's wrong with a drinking fountain? I mean, don't get me started on. I don't like leaf blowers, roadworks with no people working on them. I'm pretty much Larry David.
The caption says, as soon as you turn 40, this is you. I think that may be more of us than just the 40-year-olds. I bet you there's some like pretty crotchety over 30s at this point that are looking out there going like, what the hell's the purpose of you clowns? So maybe we're all a little bit of Hugh Grant on there. We're just one big pet peeve walking around peeving on everybody. I've never heard it said that way, but I do like it. All right. God bless all of you. Thank you for listening. Appreciate you guys being part of the program. You guys are the ones who make it happen. And there you are. And I'm sorry that somebody rated us into the American Radicals podcast. But if you're listening right now, you can find Steve Friend in a few minutes. And it's at AmradPod. He's over on YouTube. He's on Rumble. And he's a good dude. So check him out. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Hopefully, maybe we'll have some good news. What do you think it'll be? All right. See you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.